Welcome back, everybody. Andrew McPeak here, and with me, as always, is the brilliant and resilient Gina Watts.
Hey, hey, hey. Glad to be here.
Well, folks, yeah, glad to be here with you too, Gina. And we're glad that you're listening. If you, like us, believe that school should be more than just essays and GPAs, if you believe that EQs are just as important as IQs, and if you expect amazing things from the next generation, then you are in the right place because we believe that too. And today we're diving into a conversation about practical mental health, what it really looks like to create well-being for students and staff, not just theory, but actually everyday life.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a good and important topic, and we have the right person with us today to help us dive into that. But before we get to her, we have our question of the day. So to kick things off, I'm going to ask the question, Andrew, and I hope you're going to be ready with an answer. So
I'm ready.
Okay. What's one self-care habit that actually works for you, and what makes it sustainable? So it has to work, but also it's sustainable.
Yeah, that's good. This is such a good question for every adult to figure out in their life because and I know you didn't ask me to comment on the quality of the question, Gina, but I'm going to anyways, because it's like one of the most important adulting things that we do is to learn who we are, how we think, what our habits are, what's healthy for us, all those kinds of things, and then create those guardrails to make sure those things happen. So, sorry. Now my answer. For me, the secret, and I figured it out about 4 years ago. The secret is to have a quiet space in the morning. A quiet space in the morning. And so it's honestly filled with different things. I wish I could say I was one of those people who did the same thing every morning. I don't. Well, that's not true. There's one consistent thing, and that is coffee. So coffee must be a part of that. But it's got to be it's got to be quiet. It's got to be coffee. But other than that, it could be a number of things. It's maybe peaceful. I have a really great living room, and I love looking out the window, so it's just quiet. Maybe it's thinking, it's reading, it's praying, it's meditating. It could be a number of things. But for me, having that space before everything starts kind of lays a foundation for me that changes everything, and nothing beats that for me. So
That's good. That's good.
yeah. What about you?
So, okay. So, transparent moment. You guys can't see us, but I'm putting an L on my head, judgmental of myself. Here's the thing. I have a hard time with this. I always have. And part of it is, I think, my wiring and my formation as a doer and a fixer. So I have to intentionally, I think I've shared this with you guys before at some point, I have to intentionally interrupt my habits and my behaviors that are kind of connected to my now modified achiever spirit. Okay. It's not fully addressed, but it is modified achiever spirit. So one thing for me that has been I go through seasons, right? So like for me, a daily rhythm is kind of like not fully realized because my achiever spirit then holds myself accountable, and I'm like, you missed Wednesday and you're a loser.
And now you failed.
So now you fell.
You might as well give up the whole project.
The whole thing. So here's the thing that I learned to do is I commit to a weekly thing, right? And it's a weekly space of reflection where my husband, my kids, my parents, the people that are in my charge, I know I'm not going to be interrupted. So it's just a time during the week where I am doing what you said you were doing daily. So that's one thing I do. Another thing I do, and I used to treat this as like a treat for myself or like a reward instead of like self-care, which we know self-care is really maintenance. Like it's something that we should do, like it's the minimum that we should do.
Yeah.
Is that an annual retreat?
Oh.
It looks different all the time. Sometimes it's like I go get a hotel room for a day and it's just the day, right? But I'm going to do that as care for myself. Sometimes it looks like Airbnb weekends, right? Or a couple of days. sometimes it looks like going to a retreat center or somewhere that's like, I will tell you guys, I am not a silent retreat person, as you can tell by my long-winded answer. But however, they are available for those of you that like that.
They are.
So self-care for me, that's kind of a thing that I do.
I know you commented on it being a long-winded answer, but that was so practical. It makes mine feel like really boring. And the only reason I say that I'm not shooting on myself. Instead, what I'm commenting on is you got a young kid at home, and that I think deeply affects what's possible. I'm not in that place, and so I think there's a lot of people listening who are probably heard me say what I said and went, "That sounds great, Andrew. You've never been to my house before," So I really appreciate, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners appreciate that answer too. So
True story.
Yeah.
And our hope, friends, in you thinking about this question, we don't just do these questions because it's a segment in our show, but like in particular to this question, to think about what are the small intentional rhythms that you can do that can completely shift your mindset, and really help you be set up for success as an individual, and not just as who you are as a professional. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And clearly, I don't want to just lump you in with me, Gina, but I think I can say both of us are still learning in this category,
Yes.
which is why I'm so excited about today's guest, who's going to help kind of guide us and advise us and hopefully help our listeners as well. We have the amazing Lindsay Carlson joining us today.
Yes. Give it up for Lindsay. She is a professional school counselor at Denmark High School in Georgia, and she brings a refreshing real-world approach to student wellness. With a background in leadership development, mindfulness, yoga, and canine assisted therapy. Yes, you heard that right. Canine assisted therapy. Lindsay has spearheaded creative SEL programming that actually meets students where they are. She's not just talking about mental health, she's living it. As a wife, mom of a spirited toddler, and someone who shows up authentically in every space, Lindsay is passionate about building sustainable, no-fluff self-care strategies that work for real people.
I love that. Sustainable and no fluff. Lindsay, we are so excited to have you join us. We could not think of a better guest for today's theme on emotional resilience and well-being. We're really excited to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited. I loved y'all's answers to the questions before. I was like, oh, this is such a loaded question.
Yeah. We have so much fun with those and embarrass ourselves regularly. That's the way of it. So, well, Lindsay, I'm going to.
And tick.
Indeed, it is. So, Lindsay, I'm going to kick us off here. Again, thank you for being with us. So, as we get started, you got a short introduction there, but we'd love for you to introduce yourself a little more to our listeners and share a little bit about your journey as an educator.
Yeah. So I in high school, I actually was like not your typical smarty pants kiddo. I was the student athlete and art kid, and like English, math, science, social studies were not my thing. I wanted nothing to do with them. So going into education was not where I thought I was going to go. I was geared up to go to college to play athletics, and I got that ripped out from underneath me, that, rug pull. Ended up having to do a lot of soul searching. And that's actually when I ended up in my counselor's office my senior year. I had no idea where I was going to go, no idea what I was going to do. And it was that drastic loss of, who am I now? If I'm not an athlete, I'm not going to school to play lacrosse, like, what am I doing? And so that's when I just did a lot of exploration into the self and what I wanted to do, and just a lot of like breaking down of what's next. And so I made a kind of off the cusp decision in college to go to a smaller school, one that was going to pay for more of my education. Didn't quite know what I was going to do. I literally, what did I sign up to do? My first major, I think it was English. And I got into that because I knew I liked writing and things like that. And then that's when one of my friends was like, well, why don't you do psychology? You're really into the self and exploring that kind of stuff. Like, why don't you just kind of take a couple classes, see what happens? I took a psych class, fell in love. The rest was history. And then I was like, oh, what can you do with a psych undergrad? And then, the giggles happen and people are like, nothing. So I was like, well, what's next? And that's when I started talking to different people in social work, counseling. I ended up talking to my old high school counselor because he happened to be my high school neighbor in high school. And he was like, yeah, you can get a master's degree, undergrad in psych, and you can become a counselor or in a high school or K through 12 or private practice. And I was like, that kind of sounds very interesting. I would love to maybe go back into a school system. And so I ended up going right into grad school after my undergrad. And in grad school, I ended up working in student leadership and development. And that's kind of where I really started to see the high achieving people and the drastic, I guess, the drastic kind of effect that high achieving students or really high achieving people in education can struggle with when their needs are not met or they believe that like that is all that they can be. And so I was like, I want to be in schools. I want to be in schools with kids and I want to teach them how they can be more than just what they think they are, that they're not just one thing, we're multifaceted. And so that's kind of what I've fallen into. I ended up in high school. And I'm now in year 9, I think. And so I work specifically with 9th through 12th grade. So it's not an individual grade level in high school, but all 9th through 12th. And so at this level as well, we work with them on everything. So they are ours for social, emotional, academic, college, career, and so forth. So we have the whole spectrum at the high school level, which is really fun.
So good. I'm getting energized. So part of my background's career development, Lindsay. Okay. So as you're talking, I'm like, you used your journey for good and you're able to empower these young people by not only just using your education and expertise, but also your personal experience through what you discovered about yourself. Thanks for sharing that.
Of course.
Thinking about our topic and how educators are experiencing life right now, we're finding like burnout and anxiety are at an all-time high amongst educators. What do you see as the biggest contributors to this emotional strain in the school environment?
I think it's a double-edged sword. And when I talk about the topic, I almost feel like I'm talking about two separate things. So we've got the systematic issues that we all see. They're in the news every day. We're talking about them constantly. They're the systematic issues of, low pay in education just across the board. No matter where you are, the pay is fairly low. You've got the systematic issues when it comes to big decisions being made up top and then those sprinkling down into the system and not really having procedures or policies or anything to kind of give help to the things that they're rolling out to us. So, for us, big school-wide programs constantly come out in the counseling space where we have to run school-wide curriculum for, in Georgia, it's called Bridge Law. So we have to teach them about all these different things. They roll those out and then there's no substance after the rollout. And so it's like, okay, we have to pick up those pieces, create those substance things to roll those things out. So you've got those big systematic issues, as well as, not having faculty or staff in the building, like head up administration who's helping and supporting you. So that's one issue I see with burnout is the systematic issue. But what I talk about with people a lot is when we take away those systematic issues and we take away the things that we really as an individual can't change right in this moment. The real things that I see kind of playing into this burnout with teachers, I think is more cultural. And I think it comes down to the way we are viewed culturally in society and kind of what our role is in kids' lives. I think we go back to the 90s and the early 2000s, and the school and education, I feel, was really seen as like the second parent. They're raising the child. They have innate trust in the educational system. And so I think teachers were kind of put on this playing ground of we've got authority and we've got knowledge, and the parents really respected that, or the community respected that. And I've seen over the past kind of maybe 15, 20 years, this shift in the culture where we are being told as educators that we are knowledgeable and that we are second parents, or we're being told that we need to kind of be parents or second parents to these children, but there's no trust put into us. Or there is this air of this the school works for us instead of the school works with us. And I think for us as educators, talking to teachers, talking to administrators, talking to my own counseling staff, I think a lot of the time we bleed empathy and we bleed this idea that we have to kind of bend at the knee to all wills and all requests coming from the community. And there's not that air of mutual respect where we're here to collaborate with you in what's best for your child, but it's not always going to be exactly what you want. And that's where we have to have that teamwork come into play. And I think right now what we're seeing with the burnout is we don't have that teamwork. And I think we're trying to figure out how to change that culturally, but I think that's where I'm seeing, if we're taking away that systematic issue that we really don't have, unless we're in Congress and we're calling our senators and changing those systematic things, if we can't change that, the real issue I see is this moving away from collaboration and teamwork that we used to see in the early, the late 90s, the early 2000s, and moving into the school works for us and what we want. And that's where I'm seeing teachers kind of feel like they're being told and given all this responsibility and then said, well, you have to do what we say. And that, I think, is a hard dynamic that we're trying to battle every day. And I'm at the point where I'm kind of like, I don't know where we go from here with that either.
Yeah. Lindsay, there's so much insight in that answer. You very clearly not only are living it every single day, but you're also paying attention to kind of the meta stuff. So I just really, really appreciate that. It strikes me, I go to a lot of places and with teacher burnout on the rise, as well as, the average length of time that a teacher stays in the profession seems to be shrinking as well. And there's some objective data on that. The perspective that many people are picking up is that teachers must not be resilient like they used to be, this next generation of teachers. And what you're pointing out is the issue is not resilience, right? The issue is feeling like the work that I'm willing to do, which teachers are just as willing to do today as they were 20, 30 years ago, that they're not seeing the return or the reciprocal investment from the community and maybe from parents. Is that a good way to summarize that?
Yeah, and just to add to that, it's almost like, and I said something like this to someone today. It's almost like we're not allowed to have boundaries, and if we are holding up our boundaries, we are not resilient anymore because we're quitting. When in fact, our boundaries have been disrespected routinely, daily, hourly, by the minute. We just did schedule changes for the past week and a half, every day for 2 hours. And I would say 15% of the time, my no was respected.
Mm.
And I think it's one of those things where it's what you just said, where people look at us and are leaving the profession or leaving as, oh, you're not resilient anymore. You can't put up with this. And I think I want to challenge that idea of, no, you're disrespecting me as a person, as a professional, and you're disrespecting my boundaries within my profession. And I don't have to put up with it anymore.
Mm.
Because education is changing in other assets. We can go to other different educational outlets now because we have those. And I think educators are seeing their worth where the general public sees that as, oh, you're quitting. When really in reality, educators leaving, I think they need to see that as more of, I now value and see my worth. And I'm saying that I don't want to be treated like that anymore. And I think I think that's how teachers and educators think about it. And I do think, some of them probably do feel shame or sadness for leaving. And that I would feel the same if I left right now. But at the same time, I think my decision would be rooted now in the knowing that I'm leaving because my boundaries were disrespected as a professional who has worked very hard in this field, has earned many degrees, and has done my professional due diligence to try and be the best person and professional I can be so that your child can have the best thing. And if that's not going to be respected, then why would I stay?
Yeah.
That's where I have that thing that you just kind of, it's not that we're not resilient. I think, and to put it a little bluntly, and sometimes I get in trouble for these things, but educators are expected to save children's lives. If we want to lay it all down, we every year are taught to stop the bleed, how to stop active shooters, how to talk to children who want to hurt people, how to make sure our buildings are protected. And we are expected to save children's lives, but our professional boundaries cannot be respected. And that paradigm for me, I think, is where I've become so passionate about it. Because I think that's where as a society, we're not putting those two things together.
Yeah, it seems like the responsibilities continue to mount, but the respect and the trust are not rising along with it in a lot of ways. So, Lindsay, this is really good. I'm going to keep our conversation going just because I feel like we got more wisdom to pull out of you here. You in your daily work are focused on really what we're talking about today, which is implementing things like mindfulness, social and emotional learning, all of those kinds of practices. How have you seen, because for many people listening to this, they may understand those ideas in part, but they haven't actually seen them implemented. So what have the results been like of some of these practices being implemented? So have you seen them maybe support, especially the emotional resilience of students, and then even maybe educators as well, if you've seen that implemented for teachers?
Yeah. So for students, I'll bring it back specifically to a student I just had graduate last year. She came in her freshman year, and our population that we have here is very academically driven. And this is the other part of education that I feel is, bringing on the burnout. It's all multifaceted. But a lot of education right now is about GPAs and how high of the class rank can I get, and not really anymore about what career do I want, what do I want to learn, how much can I learn. And so I feel like that plays into it as well. And so for me, our population is very much that way. I have students who will email me from 8th grade and say, I want to be valedictorian. How do I do that? And so I had one of those students, and she came in, and her first year took every honors class she could possibly think of. Constant anxiety, constant skipping school because she couldn't deal with the weight. But just almost like banging her head against a wall every time. Hey, what if we move down a level? And it's this internal struggle for these kids of, I want to do the best I can and I want to be the best, but I also feel that if I can't reach that level, I must be dumb. When in reality, they're not. They're just not checking in with themselves. They're not being mindful. They're not reflecting on what their needs are in order to be successful. They're just thinking that everybody else is doing it, so I am expected to do it and I should be able to do it. And that's not reality. And so that freshman year, it was a battle between me and her going back and forth of saying, like, what do you need in this moment? And she came to me sophomore year and finally was like, I'm struggling. I'm having suicidal ideation. I can't do this anymore. I can't do any of this. And so we sat down and I did some mindfulness with her. And I asked her some questions and she looked at me and she was like, I've never asked myself what I need. I've never asked myself what's too much, or in the moment where I'm feeling like I can't do it all, what can I take away? I've never asked myself those questions. And so it was really just about sitting with her and saying, every aspect of our life, we have to be mindful and reflect on. And that can be as simple as from the things we eat in a day and being mindful of what we're putting in our body to what is my body feeling right now in this moment, to actually like talking to ourselves. And I tell the kids, I'm like, if you're not having conversations in your brain with yourself all the time and reflecting on those things, and you're just kind of pushing the feeling out or pushing the idea out or just repressing it and not having that conversation, okay, what do I need right now? And then expressing that, nothing's going to change. And we're just going to continue in this cycle and this loop of repress, 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 break down, break down, break down, until one day something truly does happen. And we do have some kind of mental breakdown or true suicidal ideation or something like that. And so after sitting with her and talking, we did like a couple months of where I would ask her very specific mindful questions. This class was causing her a lot of anxiety. And so I was like, well, when you're in that class, I want you to be mindful of what your body's telling you. So when you're in there, I want you to notice, does your head hurt? Is your belly hurting? Are you getting really sweaty? Like right now, I'm actually very sweaty. I'm very anxious, like how I'm reflecting on how I'm feeling. And so, I'm telling her these things and she's like, well, no, when I start feeling it, I just stop thinking. I just shut down because if I think I'll feel. And I was like, yes. It's like, that's the point, girlfriend. You've got to feel it because when you start feeling it, then you start saying, oh, whoa. I'm not meeting my needs. Like I need to do something right now because this is too much or this is not enough or I need to do something to protect myself. And so junior year comes around. This girl goes from all APs, all honors, everything, to taking theater classes. She's in a peer facilitation class where she's helping with our special ed students. She's able to join more clubs because she decided to take 2 on-level classes instead of all APs. And she is thriving. She is so happy and she's able to articulate herself to me and she's able to, really be able to reflect on her day and just have friends, join clubs, do things. And over the course of the year, I'm watching her. She's not having any more suicidal ideation. She visits my office only to say hello. It's no longer full-on panic attacks coming in my door. And at the end of the year, I'm checking in with her. And throughout the year, we check in, we do our mindful thing. And she's now come to me and she said, I have a daily check-in I do with myself for mindfulness. And I check in every day with myself. And at the beginning of the day, I take a deep breath in the mirror and I talk to myself in the mirror like you told me, like to talk to myself in my head. She said, I couldn't do that. And one day you said that you talk to yourself in the mirror. So I decided to do it. And she was like, and I have a daily conversation with myself every morning now of, okay, what do you need today? Now, can you tell someone what those needs are so that they can be met? And I was like, girl, yes. Okay, so what does that look like for you? And she was like, well, I knew that I had 2 tests. And what I would have done before is I would have just shut down and told my mom I was sick and stayed at home and not gone and taken those tests. But now what I do is I say, okay, I need this from Miss Carlson. So when I go in the morning, I come check in with you. I say hi. I get my good going for the day. And then I go check in with that teacher and I say that I'm really anxious about the test. And if I get anxious, I need to be able to go walk and do a lap. And so before the test, even that day, I go to my teacher and I say, hey, when I get really anxious during the test, hey, can I go take a lap real quick and then come back to the test? And every single time her teachers have always given in to her request and said, absolutely, if that's what you need, go do it. But she's been able to express her authentic needs to the people around her so that her needs are met every day. And that looks different in different ways for different people. But she's now come up with systems on her own to be mindful in her everyday and begin to express herself. And the more she's expressed herself, the more her needs are met. And the more she's like, well, I feel kind of carefree because if I just tell someone how I'm feeling or I'm acknowledging how I'm feeling in that moment, things get better. And I'm like, whoa, mind blown. Yes, because when we're truthful with people, when we're honest about our experience right then, or we're honest about the needs of things we need to be successful, and somebody that we trust can meet those needs, we're going to thrive.
Yeah.
But until we have that collaboration and we're honest with people, and we're mindful of what we actually need, our needs are never going to be met. and we're never going to be able to thrive. And so I think that's what keeps some people in that perpetual loop is if I just push it all down, I don't think about it, I'm not mindful, then things I can just keep going, keep those blinders on, keep going in the tunnel.
As you're talking, I had so many thoughts from thinking about how, Andrew and I had just had a conversation about how we have students who we continue to still do traditional lecture style teaching, but we don't empower them with the skills they need to survive life. And the things that you're talking about are going to help these young people not just survive, but thrive as adults as they navigate uncertainties and unknowns and speak up for themselves in order to be successful in mundane things as well as big complex things. So yeah, that's one thing I thought of. And the other thing I was thinking, as you were talking, I'm like, these skills, these habits that these students are creating under your guidance, really require courage in many ways, because they have to, you're asking them to do a thing not knowing how necessarily the teacher is going to respond as far as in the classroom environment. And if that teacher is a safe space for them to say what is so, but they won't know it until they try to do it. Right. And so I'd be curious to know, the nerd in me is like, I wonder how many teachers were kind of, like set aback by an experience like that with a student, but then it kind of opened up their eyes as well to serve and teach in a different way.
Yeah. And I even encourage the students, I'm like, put it back on me. If you're afraid to ask for your needs, say, Miss Carlson said that I needed to express my need to you, and this is what I need to be successful. And the teacher can meet them where they're at. And I will tell the student, if the need is not, meetable, we need to have that conversation. But most of the time it is. And it's something small of like, hey, like, and this would have been beautiful for me in school. I had such bad test anxiety. But like on test days from a teacher, like when I asked a question, instead of being met with like I can't answer that, of more of like a, hey, Lindsay, I know you've got this. It's right there. You need to you got this. You can figure it out. I just needed that moment of encouragement to like, because I was always like, I second guess. I was like, oh, maybe it's B. No, it's got to be D. Like, yeah, second guessing that I know the answer. And it's kind of like, I just needed someone to reassure me that like, you do know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You can do this. And so, and that goes for teachers as well, just that authentic, like asking for your needs, because I do think that's also what leads to burnout with teachers is we work in silos. We feel like we can't ask for help, or that we're educated, like we should be able to figure it out ourselves. We're educators. Like that's what we do. That's our job. And so I think for teachers as well, it goes back to the systematic issues. A teacher can't be mindful in living their best self if they don't have administrators and things that back them up. But at our school, we've made an environment where if a teacher comes to me and they have a need, I'm going to figure out how to meet that need so that they can thrive in their classroom. If that means, we've had teachers come and they're like, this class is literally insane. Like the dynamics in it are just not working. I'm not going to be able to teach this class. Is there something we can do to fix this? Absolutely. We're going to try and work to meet that need so that you can be the best teacher. Those kids aren't going to learn if you can't be a good teacher. So let's figure that out. But we've had years where a young teacher may not have felt or known yet that they could say those or set that boundary or demand that need to be met so that they didn't feel like they were burning out. And we get halfway down to the year and, they're having a mental breakdown, or admin stepping in being like, why is your fifth period off the walls and in the hallways and all these things? And the teacher's like, well, they're all crazy and you all put them in this one room and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, there was no communication here. You felt like you were you felt unsupported. So how can we support you? But I think that's my challenge for teachers. And I know in some situations they can't be, but I want them to be unashamed to tell people what they need as an educator so that they can be successful, and to tell people what their boundaries are as well, because I think that is a huge thing for teachers, is most minimal amount of boundaries are in place for educators. I think I tell people all the time, I get emails at like 1 a.m, and then at 8 a.m, I get a call from my principal that's like, why didn't you answer this parent? They've already called 6 times today. And I'm like, they emailed me at 1 a.m. I'm so sorry. It's kind of one of those things where I don't know if other jobs are like this, but you wouldn't show up at a doctor's office or call them at 1 a.m. and expect a phone call by 8 a.m. You wouldn't go to Beaver Toyota or a car dealership and, do that there. And so it's kind of like, where did this informality with education come from? And why have us as educators, teachers, faculty just kind of accepted it? Why haven't we kind of set up that boundary and said, yes, we are part of the community, we are part of the people, but we need to protect ourselves in some way, shape, or form. We are professionals. We do also have lives. I know when I was in elementary school, I thought teachers lived at school. I think some people still think that. But we do have lives outside of school. We have to be able to set boundaries to be healthy, because if we can't have good work-life balance.
So I think Andrew is going to ask you another question as we continue our conversation. The things that were coming to my mind, you actually took care of it, because I was wondering about how can educators be mindful of it. And I think, maybe one thing that you could lean into with us is, so your role is really in support of students, but I'm sure your door is often open, and receiving of your peers. And so talk about maybe how you leverage your relationship with them, and maybe leverage feels like a not great word, but like you use the relational equity that you have with your peers to support them. Yeah. Maybe talk to us a little bit about that.
I think it comes down to being authentic myself. They know my door is always open for them, but I think breaking down that barrier of like what my own personal issues are, and being authentic with them back of like, I hear what you are struggling with, and I am in that boat with you. Like, you are not alone. You are not on this island where you are the only person that feels this way. I can promise you so many other people do. But how can we get you to a point where you don't feel this way? And what is that going to take? I think a lot of the time, it goes back to that feeling for teachers of like, they feel like they have to be able to put on that face and be strong, because they're supposed to be able to take care of others. We're helpers. That's what we do. And I just constantly remind them that they're allowed to ask for help. And I know that's a silly reminder, and I know it seems really simple, but sometimes when you just remind them of that, like, they'll be in the hallway, they'll be saying something, and I'll say, hey, do you need help right now? And I look them in the eyes, and you can see it. You see it. You see that little thing in their eyes that will tell you whether they do or not. So I don't really listen to what they say. I look in their eyes. And then when they say, yeah, I could really use some help right now. What do you need? How can I fulfill that for you? And I think every school needs someone like that. And we are so lucky at the school I'm at. We have multiple administrators, counselors that will do that. But there has to be someone in the building with you that it can be that person for you. And this is my other challenge for teachers. If there is not, you may need to find another building. And that's really hard to say for educators. I mean, I know people, I went to school in the same district that I actually am in. So I have people that I work with now that were my teachers back in elementary school. And I have seen now that I work with them and I've had some of these conversations with them, I've had someone who's been like, I should have left my school 10 years ago, but I didn't because I didn't want to leave the kids. I didn't want to leave my community. I felt like I had to stay almost like in debt to them. And I said, but did that fulfill you as a person? And she said, no. And she said, and so I retired early. And for me, it just was this, it was just, I almost wanted to cry for her and just be like, I wish there was someone who had told you it was okay to leave and okay to go fill your cup. Because as educators, we have to be reminded of that. And so I wish there was someone like that in everybody's building who could look into their eyes and say, I know something's not right. What can we do to support you? And there's not always going to be. And I think at the end of the day, we have to remember that we come first. We have to put on our air mask first. We have to put on our life preserver first. We come first because we can only be good educators, good people, good humans if we come first and take care of ourselves first. And it's so hard. It's so hard.
Lindsay, this has been so good. And I feel like there's a lot of people probably listening to this who are experiencing some degree of liberation, right? Of you're kind of validating feelings of, oh, I've felt that way for 5 years and nobody's ever told me I'm allowed to feel that way. So thank you for, as Gina likes to say, saying what is so. I really, really appreciate that. Sadly, we're on to our last question. We're real big believers.
Sorry.
No, this has been so good. We're really big believers in being practical, and it sounds like you are as well. And so I want to end on that practical note as you give advice, especially to educators, since that's who's listening. What are some practical strategies that you give educators that can help them incorporate things that they can incorporate into their daily routine that are going to help them protect their own emotional well-being, maybe make some better decisions, and certainly have a healthier relationship with their job? So what are some practical things that you recommend?
Absolutely. Gina, it kind of goes back to what you said and how you answered the question at the beginning. I think both of you, Andrew, you do something kind of every day. And then Gina was like, if I try and do something every day, I'm going to feel ashamed of that. And so I like to tell people, you have to do what works for you and what's realistic. For me, I would love to do something every day. Not realistic. I am not a good routine girly. And so for me, Gina, it's kind of like you were, there are some things that are more like annual, that like I have to have one vacation a year. As educators, we don't really get to go on vacation a lot. I have to have one vacation that is fully unplugged. Do not know what society is. That's my thing that I can do. But practical everyday things that we can do are simply checking in with ourselves. Actually asking ourselves hard questions. If that is waking up, I like to do my inventories in the morning. So like setting myself up for the day, that invitation in the mirror where I talk with myself. Some people, it might be an afternoon reflection check-in. Okay, how did I feel about today? What could have gone better? What did I need? That kind of thing. I think reflection first and foremost is the best way to take self-care and mindfulness and slap them together. That is the best thing you can do for yourself every day, is just a mental inventory of your needs, your wants, and what could go better, what we need to do more of, and like kind of what's that mental inventory. So that's first and foremost the most practical thing somebody can do. The second thing is make it easy. And I know that sounds really, again, making it down to like the basics, but like make it easy. And for me, physical activity is something that I cannot go without. But I have a 2-year-old. Your girl cannot get to the gym. I'm not going at 6 or 7 o'clock at night because, like Gina, I cannot do something every day and I'm not committing to going that late. I don't know what my day is going to be like here. So emotionally, I may not be able to. But the one thing I can do every day, take a walk. I take a walk every single day. And it's not going to be like a 5-mile walk. It could be a 15-minute walk to my mailbox and back. But it's unplugged. It's mindful because I'm engaged in that moment. There's no expectations of myself. And I think that's another thing with self-care. We need to remind ourselves of there's no expectations here. None. No expect. You just need to take care of yourself. What is that need, and how can you take care of it? So for me, that's just walking every day, and it's also for me connection. So I have to connect with somebody every day, and we have surface level conversations all day. For me, that's not connection. For me, I very much so am a very deep feely person. So I need deep connection with somebody daily, and so for me, that was asking very early on for that need from my husband of saying, hey, when we come home, I need a 15-minute like real touch base of what, like no phones, we check in with each other. And that is my connection that I really need to feel emotionally full in life. And that can look like a lot of different things. For some people, maybe I have to work out at 5 a.m. every day. I have to go to the gym. But I think at the end of the day, that reflection piece will help you build what you need daily. And then as long as you're mindful of what that need is and you can meet it in a really unexpectation, simple way and really dumb it down, like really dumb it down to the basics. Think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We need to just be taken care of. If that's getting food in your body, you don't need to be a 5-course chef. I got a tinkle of the ADHD. I'm constantly using frozen meals. I'm constantly using prepackaged everything because I know I need to eat. And for me, eating is a part of self-care because I really want to fuel my body properly. But your girl's not making 5-course meals or meal prepping. I can't do that. Do I have really healthy frozen meals and prepackaged food and all that stuff so I can make sure I'm taking care of myself? Yes. And that's my self-care. But it doesn't have to be rocket science. It can be very, very, very easy. And so I think that's where it all comes in. Like you don't need a 10-course skincare thing. If you just washed your face that day and that's self-care for you, love it. That's what I want. But it can be super, super easy, super, super complex. It can be big. But at the end of the day, the best thing to do is take inventory of what your needs are. Mm-hmm. Really get back to the basics of what that need is. Dumb it really down. Make it simple. And then just do it. It can be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour. Just do something. And then take inventory. Do I feel a little bit better? Do I feel like I filled my cup a little bit? And if you feel like you filled your cup, then try adding more in. And more and more. And then hopefully eventually it just becomes part of your everyday. It's literally second nature for me now. When I get home, my son literally goes, mailbox. And we turn everything in. We just walk to the mailbox together. And now it's just become second nature. So I don't even think of it as self-care or part of my routine. We just do it. And I feel better. And so I think that's what we need to get back to is just the raw, authentic, what fills my cup? How simple can it be? And do I need more? And if I do, where can I get that?
Lindsay, we knew that this time was going to be like jam-packed with so much information, as well as just your excitement for this particular content, and not just your excitement, but your authenticity about the importance of self-care for students, for educators, and if you find yourself not in either one of those categories, I'm sure you got a lot out of this session with Lindsay. So let's give it up for Lindsay and thank her for her time with us today. You know, this brings us to our final segment. Tends to be Andrew's favorite segment.
DMI!
DMI. DMI, of course, stands for Don't Miss It. Andrew and I will both highlight the one thing from today's show. It's going to be hard to do one thing, but we're going to do one thing from today's show that we don't think you should miss. So, Andrew, do you mind kicking us off and telling us what's the DMI from Lindsay Carlson?
Man, there were so many good things. There was always so many good things, but Lindsay, you rock. I got to call out the fact that you said, I got a little tinkle of ADHD. Laugh about that. For a
It's a t-shirt.
Yeah. And how practical you were, especially saying like for you, I'm not making a 5-course meal. For me, cooking is one of the things that de-stresses me. And so I love the beauty of that conversation of saying it's really ultimately about the goal, right? And so you said so many good things, but to me, the don't miss it. The thing I will come back and think about is the story you told of that student who came in your office. because I think that you painted a picture of what so many educators are facing right now, which is a group of students who are walking into our schools and they've been told a story from outside of our schools about what success looks like, about what achievement looks like, about what value looks like. And what you did with that girl, that young lady, is you rewrote the narrative. And you said it isn't somebody else's definition of success. And it isn't an arbitrary definition from you about what being the best is either. Instead, it's about taking stock of what's inside. What are your strengths? What are your desires? What are your hopes? What are your dreams? And what are your emotions right now? Calling those things out, telling the truth. And what you said, this is the quote that I love Tinkle of ADHD, but this is the quote I'm really going to take away is you said, if we don't learn to take stock of ourselves, nothing is ever going to change. And I think if that's not the message that people should be getting from this podcast episode, I don't know what it is. So
Yeah.
I hope I didn't steal your thunder, Gina, but that's my deal.
I mean, we always take the same things. So I'm doing all the snaps. However, it's hard for me to give one because there's really two real big things that stick out to me. So I'm going to break it and I'm going to do two. All right. First one, real quick. Lindsay was talking about really from a practical level as educators, when you're feeling this burnout rising in you and realizing, it is about taking the inventory and being mindful, but it's also naming what you need. And if what you need means change your building, then that might be what you need to find a new team. Now, here's the thing. I'm not necessarily underlining the change your building part. Here's what I want you to hear if you're listening. She didn't say quit the profession. She said change your environment. And so I think a lot of times when we get burnt out, we start to think that it's the profession or that we need to change our calling, or maybe we didn't hear it right the first time of what our calling is and are pursuing the wrong thing. And that might be the case. What she was underlining is maybe the environment isn't the right one for you. And so I just want to encourage all of our educators that are listening. We need you in this field. We know that it is hard. That's why we're doing a whole season devoted to this topic of emotional well-being and resilience. Here's the thing. It is about taking stock and then assessing the environment that you're in, because you do deserve the best and you do deserve to be equipped and led well. The other thing connected to that, though, is that maybe you're being called out of the classroom and into a position of authority where you could change the environment. So if that is a call to action for you, we have resources in our show notes. We have things for you that we can help you on that journey. Because we're not all about just like, oh, we're doing a show for fun. I mean, we do have a lot of fun, but also we're about equipping you and serving you where you are, meeting you where you are so that you can be who you were called to be for this world. Okay, second thing, you guys know I like a practical way forward. And the last thing that Lindsay shared with us is she said, take inventory, keep it basic, do it, take inventory again. If that wasn't a cycle for success, when we think about our own well-being, it's like, it doesn't have to be this complicated thing. You're going to take inventory of where you are and what you need. Lindsay talked about going deep and having deep connection. And I was laughing to myself because I was like completely the opposite, because I'm an introvert, extrovert, which isn't a real thing, but here's what I am. I get energized from quiet. And so my husband and I, we one of our marriage therapy sessions or whatever, we were talking about what we get energized from. And I was like, I just need you to not talk to me. I need an hour. I need when I come home after pouring out, I need to just go in the closet and sit in a corner in dark. And he was like, are you being serious? I'm like, I swear to God, right? But that's how I get energy. So take the inventory, then keep it basic. What is the thing that you need to do? Then do it, and then take inventory again. I am doing all the snaps. You can't even really hear it, but I want you guys to know all the snaps for Lindsay. Andrew, take us home, friend.
So good. Lindsay, we got to say a final thank you. You were incredible. Thank you for all your advice and for what you're doing as an educator and a leader.
Thank you guys. I had so much fun with you, Gina and Andrew. You guys are truly wonderful. And I love the both sides, but you guys just had so many good little tidbits adding in there. And Gina at the end there, I love the locking yourself in a closet for an hour. Like, I love it. Like, that's what you need. You take inventory, you asked for it, and you did it. It's so simple.
It is. So good. Thank you both. You guys are incredible. And of course, thank you to our listeners for joining us on today's episode of School on a Mission. Now, folks, before you hit skip onto your next podcast, we've got a little challenge for you. Grab a pen, grab a notebook, a sticky note, maybe even the back of your hand if that is all that is available. And we want you to write down one action you're going to take this week. Maybe you're going to follow that 4-step process that we just outlined. Maybe you need to do something a little bit different. Maybe you're going to investigate or read about something. Maybe there's a person you need to sit down and talk with. Whatever it is, write it down. Got it? Perfect. Now shoot us a DM with your action step. We cannot wait to see the amazing things that you're up to. So thank you so much again for joining us. And until next time, folks, stay curious, stay bold, and keep leading your school on a mission.
Thanks for listening to this episode of School on a Mission, a podcast for educators by educators, produced by Growing Leaders and powered by the Maxwell Leadership Foundation. To learn more about Growing Leaders, visit growingleaders.com. For more about the School on a Mission podcast, head to schoolonamissionpodcast.com.